Hey, Alec Miller here, founder of Royals and Rogues, with another long-form discussion. You're going to start seeing more of these, and eventually they're going to become live videos that you can participate in. So if you enjoy these, leave me a like, leave me a comment, and let me know what subjects you'd like us to cover in the future. In this video, I sit down with a good friend, ex-client, and a just amazing person, Ali, the founder of Sports Templates. I wanted to have a conversation with him after working on a recent piece that we did a bunch of animation for, because he had a really unique story, and I think a lot of artists don't think outside the box. I know a lot of people really want to get jobs at ILM or Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon or Lionsgate or so on and so forth. And I think that we tend to idealize these positions and look at them as success or not success, whether or not we've landed a position like this to validate us as artists, when really oftentimes the most success and the most freedom comes from thinking outside the box and starting your own thing. Ali and I talk about how he really wanted to work for ESPN, but being an immigrant, and living in Romania and not having any connections, he never thought that was going to be possible. But a lot of his work has ended up being used by ESPN, as well as many other large sports franchises, without him ever working for them. By thinking outside the box and creating his own solutions, they are more in alignment with who he was as a person and his situation, and making his situation work for him rather than letting it defeat him. He also has an amazing story of coming out of a war-torn zone and still maintaining his creativity and being an artist despite having to buy a car battery and strap it to his computer just to keep electricity on. I think this is an amazing story that you're going to have a really good time listening to, and I hope it challenges you to think outside the box, find your own solution, and you'll be amazed at what comes next. Okay, so I'm sitting here with I'm going to say good friend, Ali, also ex-client, not because we didn't like each other, but because we finished the work we were doing, and owner, founder, CEO of Sports Templates. And I wanted to talk to him a little bit today about his journey from not being an artist to starting out as an artist to then running a successful business, and mostly about having a different mindset around creativity. I think so often when it comes to finding work as creatives, we put ourselves in a box, right? We're really creative when it comes to what we make and what we do. But when it comes to actually looking for work, it's like, oh, I can work for these 5 studios, and it's like, Digic or Lucasfilm or whatever. And then it's like, and I can do these 3 or 4 things. It's modeling, it's this, it's that. But Ali approached in a really different way and ended up starting out his own thing. Sports Templates has been very successful. It's been shown on, highlighted by some of the top YouTubers in the world, but also used by people like ESPN and sports teams like the Timberwolves. And it's been a really cool to watch. I think I talked to him when he first started launching it, or had just launched it over a year ago. And now it's really, really taken off and become really successful for him. And I wanted to talk about changing our mindset around creativity. But first, let's maybe start with your origin story, Ali. Like, where did you come from? Where did this start? And for artists that are like, it's so easy once you've already made it. But you have a unique story that I don't think people will expect.
That's true. So this whole thing started like in around 2007. I was around like 18, 19, and I was just on this website called DeviantArt. I'm not sure if you still use it or know of it, but I
definitely know of it. Yeah, I think back in the mid thousands, that's where everybody was.
Yeah, that was the big. If you make it on DeviantArt, that's where you get all your clients. This is where you get all the street cred. And I found it by mistake, and I just started browsing it, and I was really big into Linkin Park. Like I was the most predictable 2000s kid. They were my favorite band, and I was the one thing that really surprised me about that band was that 2 of them had a graphic design degree, and they worked on their albums, and they always like their album covers were always something kind of unique, and it kind of caught my eye, and I always wanted I kind of liked that more even than the music. And I didn't even know that's even like a career choice. I thought just like, I don't know, they just come with the thing. They just get generated or something. Mm-hmm. So I stumbled upon a bunch of people who did like, when they do like a cover for music for a brand, people are doing like a redesign for their covers. And for me, it was like I wish I can do that. So I got a free program called Swish. I got like a 30-day trial. It was like a Flash program when Flash was like the main thing, and it was like you can draw in Victor on it. And I got like a PDF tutorial, and I started like drawing something for him. And I made this wallpaper and just posted on DeviantArt. For the first couple of weeks, no one gave, like no one gave it any attention or like liked it or anything. And then I don't know, something happened and it kind of blew up, and I couldn't stop. Like I just did more, and I stopped. Like I did a little bit of that, and then I started like, all right, maybe I like photography. I got a camera, started doing pictures. And then that got a little bit of attention. And then I was like, all right, maybe I'm going to do learn a little bit of 3D. So I got another tutorial to kind of learn how to do 3D Max and rendering. And all the while, I'm just posting everything I do. I just posted on DeviantArt. Some of, it was like a miss and hit. Sometimes people would like it. Sometimes it doesn't get any attention. And I spent the next 3 years just like jumping from software to software, which was like the biggest rookie mistake. Is like, oh, this is gonna make me a better artist, and then you don't know better, but like you just think like, oh, I need this 3D thing. Then I'm gonna be like really a good artist. Mm-hmm. And during that time, I started getting clients. People started like reaching out for small projects and small jobs, and I did all kinds of stuff from like 3D modeling to web design to logo design to Flash websites, and I was just saying yes to everything and trying to figure out on like, asking for like some sort of a long deadline and trying to figure out how to do it.
Right. I mean, right now it sounds kind of like everybody's origin story, right? I have a very similar origin story of like, oh, I thought this thing and it was really cool. And I was like, how do I make that? And then you just start trying to make it. And it's like, oh, this program looks really neat. I'm going to learn that. I'm going to learn Blender. And it's like, oh, that's really fun. Like, oh, but now I want to make a website. I guess I'll learn HTML or I'll learn whatever. Like, and I remember sitting there, the free program I had was GIMP. That was one I used, kind of like you said, Swish was yours. And it's the same thing. Yeah. It's like, oh, let me learn this. And it's like, oh, someone wants me to make a logo? Sure. Like I was doing everything from DVD covers to filming sporting events to like, whatever it was. As long as it was anything creative, I'm like, I'm in. Like, I'm going to do it.
I think Chris Doe says like the shiny object syndrome or something. I remember talking about it. You just, whatever, like, you get attached to something and after a couple months it just becomes old news and you want to do the next shiny thing. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I found Graphic River in Varo. They had like their own marketplace, and a lot of people were doing a lot of templates for the nightlife industry. So for like like Cinco de Mayo flyer or like New Year's Eve or Christmas Eve or stuff like that. And I kind of like it was kind of like, all right, I want to test all the skills that I kind of learned a little bit of typography and composition and like stuff from web design and stuff from 3D. And that was like the perfect place to kind of like mash everything together and put it in a template. And this is where I started posting templates on that website, and little by little it started getting me more attention. And this is where I switched from like I really need clients to I was getting too many clients, and I learned to start saying no. And it was weird for the first time. Like whenever you get a client and you say, I'm sorry, I'm booked, I just can't do it. And this lasted for three years, just posting templates. And it wasn't something I liked. I was doing it purely to learn and for the money. Because I'm not even like a nightlife person. I think I've only went to a club like a couple times in my life, and I'm in my 30s now. So, but I did it because it was just a learning opportunity. Like, all right, I want to figure out how to do this. And I've always liked sports. Like whenever I would get like the newest NBA 2K or like NBA Live, I would just pause at the splash screen that gets at the start of the game and I just look at all the NBA logos, and because they were so different. And I'm not from America, so I'm used to like different types of logos. In Europe they have the crests, and like in other places of the world they have like all kinds of crappy designs. And then like the NBA, they really do like really good work in branding, especially like American sports in general. They really pay attention because they want to sell the jerseys and they want to build that image for the team.
Right.
And it was like a different thing. American sports, they have this specific style. Like you can only find in American sports logos. The
Yeah,
big
that is really
yeah,
interesting. I was thinking about that as you mentioned it. Like I know, like I'm a casual, a very very casual fan of like football, not American football, but like football, like the European
soccer.
football. Yeah,
Yeah,
soccer as we would call it.
yeah,
But you have FSB, right, which is the football club Barcelona, and it's like this crest and it's a shield and it's like, and all the other ones are
yeah,
the same. You have like all the different sports teams are just these like different crests and shields, and it's very much so similar
yeah,
like the old days of Knights. Meanwhile, it's like Chicago Bulls, and it's like this
yeah,
bull with the horns, and we redesign it every like 6 months. It's like, okay, we need to refresh this design so people buy the new
yeah,
jersey.
yeah,
Versus, yeah, the European and other country sports leagues are more like, this is how it looks. It always looks this way. Maybe we'll like tint a color slightly more red or slightly more blue. Versus, like, I live in Arizona, and so our sports teams go through like a full rebrand every like couple of years, where it's like at first everything was purple and green because Jerry Colangelo, the owner of the Phoenix Suns / Diamondbacks, his wife's favorite color was purple, so it was like purple and green everything. And then like from there it's like gone like, no, it's black, and then it's like red, and so we're like all over the place.
yeah,
That's really funny.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is also with sports logos, I feel like everyone wants to wear a shirt with an American team logo on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you would see someone wearing the Yankees hat. They don't even know it's a baseball team. They like, they like the logo, and they just like how the aesthetics of the sports industry
Right.
in the US is. So I've always wanted to be part of that. I just looked at it and I was like, this is the coolest thing. How can I be part of it? I'm not even in the US. Like, how can I, like, you need connections, you need to know people. It's impossible. Like, no one is gonna, and I wasn't like, I was more fan of the branding and the whole visual component of American sports, as opposed to like the actual sports.
Right.
I would watch like the Super Bowl, or I would watch like the finals for the NBA, but that was kind of about it. So I wasn't like an actual like US sports fan with like, answering questions of what happened in the 90s and 80s. I didn't know a lot about that, but I just knew that this is something I like, and it's cool, and I want to be part of it. So while I was doing these nightlife templates, I just decided to use my 3D skills and make a helmet, and make it like a helmet template where people can put their logos and colors on it. And I just threw it on the website. I was like, okay, this is totally out of what I do usually, but I'm just going to do it because I like it and I want to be part of it.
So at what point is this time-wise line? Right, so we started in 2007, really, with your creative career.
This is 6 years later.
6 years later, right? 2013.
Oh, yeah, 7 to 2010. It was just dabbling in everything and trying to be wearing too many hats and trying to figure out everything. 2010 to 2013 was like focused on the templates. Like, I want to do this now with some like client work on the side. And at the end of 2013, I did this template on the website, the football helmet.
Mm-hmm.
And in 6 to 7 months, it became my bestseller, and now it became the bestseller on the website in the sports category. Up until I don't think anyone like beat it in the last 7 years, because I put so much love into it, and it was like kind of like nothing was like it. Like, there was nothing kind of like it. And I tried this doing like a 3D render into a template, and I just tried it and I put it, and it looked really nice. And after seeing that, I was like, maybe there's something there. Like, this is something I love, and people really resonated with, like, because I was putting more passion into that template as opposed to the stuff that, like, nightlife stuff that I didn't really care about. I was just doing the generic whatever sells stuff. It kind of like planting a seed is like, okay, I need to start my own website. But I was like, I don't know anything about doing that. Like, how can I compete with Envato? Like, they're one of the biggest marketplaces. They have
Right.
Theme Forest, they have Video Hive. Like, they're massive. How can I even like be noticed if I start my own thing? I'm probably just gonna be, a dusty website that people are gonna forget about, and then I'm just gonna pay for hosting for 1 year and then just stop it. So the thing is, this is kind of like an advice that I didn't want to take when I kind of did this next step. which was, I started building templates for my website and I didn't want to put it on. I was like, this is too good. I'm not putting it on Graphic River because it felt like it just being like posted with all kinds of stuff, and it's easy to not notice it.
Mm-hmm.
And I did this template, which was a logo mock-up where you see your logo on a texture for a jersey. There was nothing like it. I looked online everywhere on the internet. No one did anything like that. So, that was for a reason. It was kind of hard to figure out how to do that texture and do a close-up on it and still not look fake.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that, and I was like, how much am I gonna charge for this? Like, this is really cool. There's nothing like it on the internet. I must I'm gonna do like a really, I'm gonna put it like for a crazy amount and see how people react to it. And then before I started the website, before like I was building the website and everything, I just decided to do it for free. Because I was like, no one's going to know anything about this if I put it for whatever, even for $1. Like if there's a paywall, no one is going to come. And I think this is the best decision that can help me, catapult sports templates. Like, in the first a few months, just people started noticing it and they wanted to get it for free. But the trick was I wanted your email. Like if you get it for free, just give me your email and allow me to send you, information about my future templates, and you can have this for free. And this kind of helped me build like my initial base of my email list of like 5,000 people, which was really like, it was a big achievement for me because no one knew who I am, and I just wanted to kind of start this. And the thing is, this is one of the times where like when you think that this thing that you have that's so precious, and this like it could be like information, like I want to make a course, but my method is really like unique. I don't want to share it. Or it could be like, this thing is really cool, like only me knows about it, I don't want to share it. I think maybe the best thing you can do is just to give it for free and see what happens. Because if you want to get noticed, I think this is the best way to do it.
No, yeah, for sure. I think I recently shared a trap code, how to do like a liquid effect in After Effects, which is really hard to achieve. And it's a unique look. And it's something that got us a lot of attention. And rather than like trying to hide like, oh, this is our special technique, I was just like, okay, I'll give it away. And that ended up leading to an article getting written about us by the Red Giant team that owns that software, that made the software, and getting reached out to by them. And it was like, oh, wow, like just giving this thing away that's, really great and unique happens to, have some return on it that I wasn't expecting, versus if I just kept it a secret, that would have never happened. So I think for sure that's definitely a good little piece of advice that people should take. But I think you had a good point though. Like it's not just something that's unique. It's not just something that's free. It's something that people really wanted, right? Yeah. Like evidently 5,000 people really wanted that. Which might seem like a little or big number depending on like where your optics are set. Like you're looking at PewDiePie, Absolutely. That's nothing. If you're looking at, someone like me that has like 100 followers on Instagram, like that's a lot. That's a lot of people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the thing is like over the years, so I started the website in 2016 and up until now, I think 70,000 people downloaded it. So I was able to collect 70,000 emails just from that one free file.
Nice. That's a pretty good return. You can't pay money for that many emails like that are especially targeted at what you want.
Exactly.
Specifically.
People who really want something kind of sports related, they need a mock-up. They're interested in Photoshop. Like this is exactly the people you want to go after and kind of like serve Facebook ads to, or like get them through like a sales funnel. So, but the thing is like, I didn't even know anything about sales funnels or Facebook ads or anything like that when I started this. I'll just give it for free because no one is going to notice it. Mm-hmm. And like you said, because you gave it for free, Red Giant wrote a thing about it. If it was paid, it's going to be hard. Maybe they have their own policy where like we can't advertise stuff that kind of paid, and we have to need like some sort of a partnership deal kind of between us. But it's free. It's just free. They're not promoting any. They're not kind of like upsetting their sponsors if they have any or stuff like that.
Right.
So yeah, this is how it all started. And I don't know anything about building websites. I just hired a developer to build it for me, and because it was like that voice in your head is like, you don't know anything about running a website, you don't know how to, like, what if it crashes, what if all this stuff. And sometimes you're just not trying to figure out everything was like is what you should do, for me, because I was for a while when going back to the start, I tried to learn like ActionScript, which was like a specific coding language for Flash.
Hmm.
And it kind of died when Flash died. And it wasted like 6 months of learning, and no one uses it anymore.
It's kind of sad watching Flash now officially be like dead.
Yeah.
And it's just all these people that spent years of their life learning and becoming experts, and whole websites and whole, communities that existed on Flash-based sites are now just going to be like completely wiped out in a matter of, seconds.
You can even see a Flash website now. I don't think like any browser would support it. Like they just killed it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. And for me, like learning that coding like language for ActionScript was like the most miserable thing I've ever done. It wasn't me. I'm not that coding type. I'm more like, let's do something creative. Let's figure out how lights work in 3D. Let's figure out how textures are in Photoshop. And but starting out, like you don't even, I wasn't even examining what's happening to me. I was just like, this is work. This is what you have to do. You just, plow through and good things will happen. But as you kind of grow as a creative person, you kind of start to figure out what you like and what you enjoy. And you kind of start asking yourself like the why. Like, why am I, like, I kind of ask myself, why am I doing this? I don't even like doing the nightlife stuff. Like I'm doing it for money, but that's not enough. Like, after a while it gets to a point where like, all right, I want to really actually enjoy what I'm doing. And the success I got doing what I love, I know this sounds like cliche, like, oh, do what you love, and then like work would come and like everything else would come. For me, it worked. It probably like for other people might not work. Maybe like what you like is too obscure. It's like you got to be self-aware about this kind of stuff. Like you can't be like, oh, I only want to do, designs for a specific type of like music, soundtrack, whatever,
right.
You go niche down too much, and there's like on the whole internet there's like 2,000 people interested in this whole subject, and it's going to be hard to kind of grow it. So for me it was even scary, like, oh, I want to do graphics for the sports industry. That was for me like coming into it, it was like this might be too small. Right. Apparently it wasn't.
Yeah
But
so
let's had to try it.
Let's finish up this story we were heading on with the sports templates thing. So you launch your thing, you get 5,000 emails, and you're finishing up building a site. Then what comes next? After
that, I kind of said, I set a goal for myself. It's like, all right, if I can make $1,000 the first month, I'll just keep working on this. If not, then this was like it's an experiment. I kind of learned from it. And I'm just going to kill the website after 6 months, and that's it. And the first month was $1,037. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And then after that, I just started, I had to make a choice where like I had a lot of clients that I was doing freelance work for. And, coming back to what you mentioned before we started recording about like, before you leave like one branch, you're going to hold to another one and just be secure. I wanted to do that, but it just, I kind of asked myself this question, like, do I want to work for myself or want to work for someone? Like, do I want to work to grow someone else's business? And it was kind of like a hard decision because I wasn't like, I didn't have a lot of savings to kind of like, probably like to hold me for a few months, but then I have to figure it out. And it was hard saying no to clients that I've been working with for years by that time. But I just decided to like, you know what, I'm just going to I didn't end it. I just said I'm taking a break. And I focused on sports templates for like the next 6 months and I wanted to see what will happen. And for me, the point of going full-time was as soon as I start making the same amount of money I was making doing freelance on sports templates, all right, I'm ready to like go. It took me like 5 months before I got to that point. And I was getting scary. But then it kind of picked up because I just kind of like pushed myself to release a new template every month. And it kind of kept people interested. And I kept sending that one email every month. And it kind of brought people back. Like, and it was the same kind of criteria. I just looked at stuff that, like, I noticed that there's no hockey uniform template on the internet. People would go on different websites where you can find mockups, paid or free mockups. And I started like doing the research of trying to kind of like put myself in the perspective of one of my clients. And I started like, all right, what's available for hockey uniform? There was nothing. So I was like, all right, I'm doing that. And that was like a big success. It was a paid product, and it was a little bit expensive for that time because a lot of people weren't paying like $60 or $70 for a template. But for me, it was a template that took me more than a month to finish. And it was like, I was like, if I'm going to ask for that much money, I might as well give you like the best experience and quality I can give you. I'm giving you like 6K or 8K. I'm doing like a really nice render. I'm paying attention to all the details. So, when you're paying that much money, you know that you're getting the best that's possible, like out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a really good point you just said, and we're going to reverse engineer this at the end. But you just mentioned that, it's like there's nothing else out there, right?
Yeah.
So if you were just a Me Too, right, a second at bat, and you came out with a slightly worse looking template that is, already in high demand, but already has a lot of, solutions for it, it's like, okay, well, no one's really going to care, right? But when I've looked and I can't find this thing, and I can't find any other hockey things. And then not only is there not one, but there's not one that's at this level of quality. And then if someone is going to pay, me this much money, I'm going to try to get them to, really feel like it's worth it. Really feel like, okay, I felt like I got my money's worth. I think those are all really good things to keep in mind, for us as we're thinking about this as creatives. It's like, okay, there's the they just got lucky attitude, right? And then there's well, let's reverse engineer this. And then you start seeing how that luck is formed, right?
Exactly.
Which I just had another call where I explained my theory on luck, which is more or less, it doesn't exist. It's just not knowing all the factors, right? So when it comes to rolling dice, it's just physics, and you just don't know all the angles and gravity and rotation of the die. But if you could calculate that, then you could roll that successful die roll every time. And then same thing in your case, it's like, looks like magic that this guy just randomly decides to start a sports theme template and then happens to do this and but really it's like, no, it's like, this is successful because there wasn't a single other hockey template out there, and especially not one at this quality.
To add to that point, I have there's also the other side of this equation where another thing I did was a Formula One driver template. I looked online, there was nothing good. There was a couple that were really terrible quality. And doing a Formula One driver suit is really it takes a lot of time, and it took me 2 months. It took me more than any other template. And I did it, and no one cared. It didn't get any sales. No one noticed. So that you got to be prepared for that as well. Just because you look for something that's not online, no one is doing, and you kind of all right, I'm gonna do that. You can just expect it to explode, and everyone is gonna love it. Sometimes just things doesn't work. So in my mind, I kind of always expected the worst, and if something good happened, then that's coming at it with this mentality really helps, as opposed to oh, this is gonna be great. Everyone is gonna be on ESPN the next week, and and then no one notices, and then maybe after a year, someone picks it up and it becomes a big thing. And so it's things they don't happen according to whatever timeline that you have planned in your head. Right. Sometimes maybe they come 6 months later, maybe they never happen, maybe it's time to move on and do something else.
No, for sure. Yeah, no, I think that's something also to keep in mind for sure is and I also talked about it in the last one, which is funny. But it's you're putting out these equations, right? And letting the audience solve them. You're like, do you want this? Is this something you're interested in? And then we put this out there. And so the disattachment, not being so attached to something that you refuse to ever put it out. So you never get that feedback. And I think finding that balance of spending enough time on it, that it's quality, that it's going to stand out, but not so much time on it that you never release it is also a really important aspect to this, right? Where, you seem to be willing to take a risk on something and say if it doesn't make any money, that's fine, no worries. And if it does, if I find some success, then I'm going to, double down on that thing. It was really interesting that you mentioned that the difference between you starting this whole site and not starting it or continuing to run with it, I should say, is $42. That's essentially one template, right? So it's one purchase is the difference between whether or not you would have continued on your business.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you put these arbitrary goals that sometimes they don't really mean anything, and sometimes you gotta examine what am I doing? This is working. It's okay. Give it some time. It doesn't have to be whatever made up rule you just happen to think about now. All right, it has to do this much. If I just thought like, oh, I need $2,000, this whole thing wouldn't have happened. And I was
right.
just quit after a couple months.
That's, I mean, it's scary, but it's also, really interesting to see how many times like we might've done that, where you've just like stopped pursuing something before, it's a classic image of the guy mining for gold, and the other guy turns around and the other guy does like
exactly,
and it's there. But you also don't want to just continue to dig yourself down this hole that doesn't really have anything there ever. So,
yeah. Sometimes you just gotta figure out like, all right, it's time to go, time to try something up. So yeah, this website when I first started it was just, I was in that small designer mentality, like, oh, people see my stuff on Graphic River. I want to do something for the sports designers. I'm doing something for the small designer, kind of like me, people who want to impress their clients and get more work. And I wasn't even thinking about like the big league stuff. Like, why would of course, the NBA had a better 3D artist than me. They have all that. Apparently, like a lot of them, they don't. And it started with, I think, the first time was like the Pittsburgh Steelers. They used my free template on their actual ticket. And someone sent me that. One of the people on Twitter, he's just like, dude, is this your template? And I looked at it, I couldn't believe, like, it was on their ticket, and it was my free texture, and they got it for free, and they just put it on a ticket, and it was for one of the games.
That's great.
Yeah, when I saw it, I was like, I couldn't believe it, because like, I just did that for like the regular designer, and then like now this big NFL team is using it on their ticket. After that, I got a message from the creative director of ESPN, and he was like, dude, we're using your stuff, we're loving it so much, we need you to make something custom for us. And this is when I was like, wow, I'm making it. And it took like a month to finish that template, because there was a lot of people that kind of go back and forth, but it just kind of changed my mentality. Like, okay, now I'm amongst these people. Like, oh, I can handle an ESPN project. It kind of changed how I looked at myself, because before that I was like, oh, I'm just some designer on Graphic River, just trying to do stuff. I'm nowhere near these big league designers. Like, I could never compete. And it kind of took that one project to kind of change my mentality. It's like, okay, this is what I'm capable of. Might as well start thinking like it. Like, oh, I can handle this kind of stuff. And then I started like getting these notifications about. I had this thing on my website where like it just notifies me about emails that are not Gmail or Hotmail. So it started like every month I would get like 2 or 3 like in a Major League Soccer team, or like the Canadiens, the NHL team, and it started like, and then I got a Timberwolves, and I was more about like, I was into basketball more, so kind of reached out to them. It's like, hey, I'm just wondering, are you guys going to use it for something? And one of the designers got back to me. He's like, yeah, actually, we're using it because we did something with our photographer, and it wasn't up to par, and we used your template just for internal use to kind of show it to how the new jersey is going to look like. And then they just ended up like liking the template more than the actual photography work. So we're gonna do this whole launch with your template. Like, that's the only thing that's the only image we're gonna use to sell our jersey, which is like the biggest thing we're gonna do this year. Like, selling the jersey sales numbers are really like something they kind of look forward to. And this kind of made me think like, oh, if I knew that this is how this template is gonna be used, I would probably like put in another 40 hours into it. This is my perfectionist self kind of like wishing I knew this is going to be in the future. And since then, it was just normal for me to see like a Disney email buying my stuff, or like Fox Sports. Like, it just became normal, and it almost kind of expected, And just going back a few years, like 2015, 2016, when I started the website, that was just like, maybe in 20 years, I'll be working with these big like companies and brands and teams. So if there's anything I would like give advice to my old self, like in 2016, probably like, like have more confidence about what you're doing, and it's sometimes we kind of put this halo around like, oh, they must have some like their designers are like a mix of Michelangelo and like some, Steve Jobs, and they're like a branding genius, and like I will never be there, like I would never get close to that. And it's like, it's sometimes we kind of put this thing about like big companies that they're just made up of people, and you can just easily be part of that if you just trust your own process a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I wrote down a note here as we were talking. That's why I grabbed my notepad, because I didn't want to forget. But a big point that I hope to make with this channel is, there are no angels, is kind of the way I'd put it, which is we're all human, right? Like, so we often look at like getting a job at ILM or getting a job someplace, and we think it's A, impossible, and B, we think all those artists are like so much better than us, or like amazing and stuff like that. And a lot of them have worked hard, right? You worked hard for a number of years to get good at 3D. But as far as like the people working there, like they're using your stuff, right? So it's like, wait, you're working for a much larger company than I am, and then you're using my work, which is funny. And I had that happen recently. I'm not going to get into too many details because NDAs and whatnot, but I do work with multiple, multi-billion-dollar companies, and they hired somebody to put on an event for one of my clients, hired somebody, another studio, to do a live event, and they're getting paid way, way more. They're going to pay $1 million. And I was like, they were reaching out to me and be like, hey, can we get your assets? Can we get this project file? Can we get this? Can we get that? I'm like, wait a second. Like, you guys are getting paid $1 million for this stuff. And then you're coming to me, and then like, that's what you're going to show is my work. Like, and so it's really funny because they're just people. They're just all humans, and they have weaknesses, and they have deadlines, and they have, smaller budgets or larger budgets. So like the ticket one, I know in my head, I know exactly what happened with that, right? Someone's like, oh, hey, Joey, the tickets need to be out in 2 weeks. Do we have anything? And the guy's like, oh crap, I got to get a design together. Right. So he's like trying to figure out the design. And it's like, yeah, maybe they could get like a 3D model from a modeler that does like their stuff. But I know a guy that used to do all the graphics for the Arizona Coyotes, Phoenix Coyotes. And he, he'd be like, I can only do so much in a day, right? So he'd be trying to run a photo shoot. They'd be trying to run all the ads. They're trying to do the player intros that are going to be shown as they come onto the ice. And he's like, I don't got time for that, right? So then he's like, here, just go find a template. Like he tells the 3D guy, whatever. And so the guy's like, okay, I'm going to go find a template and make it up. And then it looks good. And it's like, that's all that really matters in the end is, does it look good? Does it meet the needs of the client? Does it meet, the needs of the ticket or whatever it is? And it's like, if it does, then how the sausage gets made isn't really a concern of most people. And then we make up this story in our heads like, oh no, they don't have like any deadlines. They don't have any budgets. Like, it's just like, they're just living in this la la land of like, all this, like the CEO and the CFO and the chief creative officer, like they all have it planned out perfectly. And like the branding is on point and nobody ever screws it up. It's like, no, not at all. And what's funny is if you really look, like, if you know where to see the seams, it's like one of those things where like my wife fixes books for a living. So now whenever she picks up a book, she can tell me if it's well made or not. But like, I have no idea because I don't make it. Right. So, but whenever you start making something, you can start looking and you start like, oh, that's where the seams are. And that's where this is falling apart. It's really funny to do. But we don't normally do that. We're not normally looking at everything and looking for the errors, and printing is one of the big ones. You can always find like bleeds and stuff like that. And something that wasn't rasterized or was, but I found multiple ads now that I'm like, oh, there's a huge typo there, or there's this other thing there, or whatever. And it's really easy to start noticing if you look for it.
Absolutely. Speaking of that, like when I was doing the templates for the nightlife industry stuff, I looked at so many stock photos that I started recognizing everything.
Yes.
Because you would look for like, I need a palm tree, and I need a model, and I need drinking a cocktail, a picture of a cocktail, whatever. So I was on Shutterstock almost like a couple hours every day. And then whenever I would go outside on the wall, I was just like, oh, that's a stock photo. And I would just recognize each one. So yeah, like when you immerse yourself in this whole thing, you're going to just really notice stuff that other people don't even see it.
Right. No, for sure. And like, we get all precious about it and think everyone's going to care, and most people don't. I worked in political ads for a little while when I first started. It was my first full-time job. And there was a famous piece of stock video known as Flag Boy. And it ended up becoming like a meme, and it got, there's a whole news article written on it. And the news article went viral about this. It's a kid running, and he has a little America flag that he's running with. And it's like was used in every political ad on either side for like 2-3 years. And it just was so common to see it that people were like, oh, that's Flag Boy. And so it's like there's an extra, right? In Hollywood, there's this like really famous extra guy that everyone started noticing was in every film. Or the Wilhelm scream, right, is another famous one where it's like, oh, that sound effect or that thing is in every single thing. And once you realize it, it starts, the magic like kind of fades away a little bit. But until you do that, it's like, oh, this is so magical. It's impossible to get a job at, or these people that are working at ILM or, you know, Cartoon Network or wherever. Yeah, they're just these masters and they're so good at everything. And like, you'd be surprised at how often, you know, and I'm not to knock them. They're good at what they do, but how often they're like, are good at one thing, but really suck at everything else. And you're like, oh, wait, you're doing this? And they're like, oh yeah, you know, or they're using like a software that's like, you know, 6 years out of date. And they're like, oh yeah, we just refuse to update to the latest version of Creative Cloud because, you know, we never had time to update, like make sure all the plugins and everything work. And this is our workflow. And so you'll go in someplace. I mean, I can't tell you, and recently it's changed slightly, but I can't tell you up to a couple of years ago how many studios I'd go into and they'd be using Final Cut 7 or 9. 9 is what was the last good one before they broke it all with Final Cut X? Either 9 or 7. Usually 7. I think Final Cut 7. And they'd be running around like with this like it's from like 2007. I think that's why it was like you know. And I'm like, why are you still using this editing program? Like it works and it's what we do. And you're like, oh wow, this is what like this top tier film is being edited on, or this like, you know, commercial for the Super Bowl is being done on. Is this like crappy piece of software hobbled together with templates from all over the internet? And like, oh, okay. Like you start to see how the sausage gets made a little bit and you're like, this isn't so magical anymore.
Actually, it's kind of like a logical fallacy where like use like, who are you to say? You say that to yourself sometimes. Like, who am I to kind of like critique there's like really huge studios work? Mm-hmm. Like what would like, just because you're a much smaller like, you know, company or like or just like a freelancer doesn't mean that your input isn't valid. Like yeah, you might sometimes know better, you know, like maybe you know a better solution to do that specific thing. So yeah, I would just say like trust these thoughts sometimes.
Right. No, I think for sure. One of the things I want to ask about, so we've kind of had the whole story, right? We've had you go from, you know, 2007, learning everything, the classical creative person. I'm going to learn photography, 3D modeling, design, video editing. Like it's just everything I see, coding, you know, anything I want to learn, I'm just going to start trying to learn it. And then I'm saying yes to every job. And if a client says like, well, can we do a 3D model? And if I've never 3D modeled before, like, yeah, I'll figure it out. And then you go and like learn Blender and like try to put it together, you know, to now doing one thing, you know, and doing it really well and doing it for a very specific niche and industry. And I want to kind of dive into each kind of part of this and be like, you know, what gave you, I think the linchpin, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but I think for me, one of the big turning points is you finding a way to merge in a unique way your interest, like your hobby, right, of playing 2K and loving the models, and in some ways that's kind of 3D renders, and your 3D skills with, you know, a need in the market. I think a lot of people, like you were saying, would have only looked at a way of working in that as, well, I have to go and I have to get a job at X sports company, right? Or ESPN, or, you know, it's either like a news station, Barstool Sports, whatever, or I can get a job at wherever. But you didn't look at it that way. You weren't like, oh, who can I work for? Instead, you're like, how can I start my own thing?
I actually did that for a while.
You did?
That was my dream for a while. And the thing is like, you know, there's this quote, Socrates, the unexamined life is not worth living. And I like to do like at least examine everything every 6 months. Like, do I really want to still do that? Like, you know, because sometimes you kind of set out this to do that goal and you never revisit the decision that maybe you did when you were 16 and you didn't know better, you know, like, you know, for example, I wanted to go to San Francisco. Like, that was my dream. I want to go to San Francisco and I work for one of those Silicon Valley, like Apple or something. I want to be designer there. And for a while, that was what I wanted to do. And I kind of convinced myself I like doing UI and UX. And I did some apps during the whole, like, it was like during that chaotic process of like, I want to do everything. And I just didn't like it. Like, I didn't enjoy it, you know? I did some good work and I got paid for it, and I'm still proud of it, but it's not something that I kind of like. It's not something I think about when I'm not working. Like when I'm playing a video game, I'm thinking about like the next template and like graphics is gonna be embedded in my mind while I like mindlessly playing FIFA or something. And that was not the case with like UI. But I kind of tried to convince myself that this is what I want to do because it's an easier path to that San Francisco Silicon Valley job. Mm-hmm. And so I was kind of stuck in that mentality until I realized that after I met someone who works at Ubisoft. Mm-hmm. So, they make like a lot of games, and it was like, wow, that's a dream. I like Assassin's Creed. I like their games and stuff. I know 3D. And he just told me like, he was really miserable. He was doing a lot of work. They were asking for overtime. He has to show up every day and do 8 hours. Like they were watching everything, they had something on the computers where like they kind of watch like a productivity thing. Mm-hmm. Where like, they blocked Facebook, all this stuff. Like unless it's a research website, you can do it. And for me, I don't work like that. I do my best stuff when I'm like, I feel like I'm free. Sometimes I would work for 6 hours straight. Sometimes I would procrastinate for 16 hours, but then I always kind of meet the deadline. And I couldn't imagine myself being in that work environment. I knew I was going to be miserable. And this is when I kind of like revisited that idea. Like, do I really want to do that? Do I really want to work for ESPN? Do I really want to work for, one of these game industry companies? And this was around the time when I was like getting into like entrepreneur stuff, some stuff it kind of helped me then. Now they kind of seem a little bit childish, like Gary Vee, for example. I don't like him now anymore. It just became too much for me. But back then it was like, okay, he says some stuff that makes sense, working for yourself. And, I would watch like Shark Tank or like, this kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, doing your own business, having your own, like this is something I never even thought about. And then just having your own thing just became way more attractive than working for some company. Mm-hmm. Because I can't like, this is not the person I am. I'm not a 9-to-5 person. I'm gonna be miserable. Because like I'm the kind of person who I would just give myself like a couple days off whenever I feel like it, and then I would come back with more productivity. And I would actually sometimes I would even work during the weekend, doesn't matter, and then just work off my own clock. And I would take a day off whenever I feel like, okay, I need it. So this was what made me kind of ditch this whole idea and re-examine this decision. And it was around the time when I was thinking about doing my own template website. Like I'm gonna go against like I'm not even like on the map, I guess, when compared with like Envato or like Creative Market. I'm still like a really small niche, but even that was like impossible when I was thinking about it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was a combination of all of that, and then realizing that maybe I don't want that traditional like, oh, I want to work for the big company, because the things like I kind of thought it through. And whenever you hear about these people like, oh, I worked for Apple for 15 years and then I started my own company, it felt like a shortcut. Like I don't even need to do these 15 years at Apple or like at Ubisoft for me to kind of like realize how I can do it now. I can just, it was like a nice shortcut. Like I can just try it. At least I could try it. If not, I can just go do this whole thing and try to work for these big companies. And I'm really, I feel blessed that it worked out for me. But I mean, thinking about it is, you said that there's like nothing kind of like as luck. I feel like it was a mixture of luck and timing. Mm-hmm. I think it would be different if I had to do that decision now.
Right. So my belief isn't that nobody can get lucky, right? What luck isn't this magical thing, though. It's just not knowing all the factors. And there are some things that have too many factors to calculate, right? Which is most of our happenstance stuff in life. Like me meeting my spouse, for instance, right? That seems like luck because there's so many factors of, well, her parents live here and I happen to live there. But if you look at it from another way, it's like it was inevitable. If you know all the factors, it's like, well, that was actually the only choice because you're going to be meeting this person. They have the right personality. They have all these other things. So it's either you can kind of look at it like like when I'm rolling the dice, right? It feels like luck when it lands on what it lands on. But if you knew, well, the physics hit here and the gravity's pulling here, it'd be like, well, that's the only place it can land, right? So it's no longer luck. Instead, it's like reality, right? It's inevitability. So I think, as far as are there factors that we don't know about and maybe you can never fully grasp or calculate, for sure. But I think it helps to take your mindset out of the idea that it's pure luck and this pure thing that just never happens, right? So
Absolutely.
because you made a number of choices that, like a good one, for example, the hockey one is like, well, of course that would happen because there isn't any other option and people were looking. And if you could factor in all the other things, the problem is there's other people, right, in the world. So we can't factor in everything all the time. And something you might assume would work one way might work another way. Like you said, like, oh, is all the factors simply demand plus, lack of availability plus whatever. And then you think that's the case. And then you release something and it's like, oh, but there was another factor I missed. And that factor was the audience for hockey's jerseys is much larger and people actually buy hockey jerseys and they have a very hardcore dedicated fan base versus when it comes to Formula One, well, they have a very hardcore dedicated fan base. You don't buy Formula One suits, right? You don't buy those outfits and they're not selling those and they're not really marketing the costume as much as they market the car and the helmet, right? But usually it's the cars and the track that's getting marketed. And at that level, when you're showing a car, it's like it's not designers buying a template of a car. It's somebody at a big advertising agency making one that has to animate, it has to drive around. So it's like, oh, okay. But if you knew all those factors, right, it would change it. But because we don't know all the factors, that's where taking a risk comes in, right? It's like you have to be like, I know enough factors that I think this is going to work. So I'm going to roll the dice and see what happens.
Absolutely. Let's say calculated risk kind of.
Yes, a calculated risk.
I'm just going to just keep trying things and see what lands. Yeah, that's just going to be almost wasting your time. So yeah, you have to do, for example, like I love how you kind of broke down the whole Formula One thing. Now you said it like, yeah, all that makes sense. I guess if I'll put a little bit more research into that, I would have probably arrived at that conclusion. Like maybe it's not the same thing. Because sometimes when something works, you're gonna make another hit the same way like you did the first one, and then it wasn't the same thing with the Formula One. So, but the thing is like you kind of learn from it, and you're okay with. I would call it like a failure because it didn't sell much and it was a waste of two. I would say a waste, but it wasn't really a waste. It was just I learned a few things. I kind of figured out a few tricks when I was working on it because it was like more challenging than other templates. So, yeah, I think like when I was first starting, I think the problem was like I was afraid of failure, and now I'm not anymore. It kind of like when it happens, you kind of look at it a little bit positively. It's like, all right, what I can learn from it.
Right. No, talking about failure and templates and all this stuff. So back in, I don't even know what year it was, 4 or 5 years ago, I had this great idea because I think Twitter had just allowed GIFs or GIFs, however you want to say it, I call them GIFs on Twitter. And it was like this big thing and it was all over the place. And I was like, okay. And I really like making them. I was making a bunch of little small GIFs, custom animations that just loop, and I had like a little series of like why I'm not at my desk, right? Because I was working for someone else at the time. And so it would be like, I would just put it up on my screen of while I was away and this GIF would loop of like a sandwich animating and it would be like at lunch, or whatever it was on break. And it would be like, the break one was fun. It was like a bone and it like snapped in half or whatever. But I was just like, let people know where I was. I was like, this is really cool. I wonder if like other people would want these. And so I did like the complete wrong way, right? Like I tried to make a full platform first. So I made like a whole website on Squarespace and made it so that people could like spend money on it. And then I went out and tried to find people to like contract to make GIFs and to try to make a whole bunch myself. And I figured that like, because I looked and there was no marketplace for GIFs, right? So if you wanted something custom or if you wanted a small looping animation, it didn't exist. So you either had to buy a stock video and then loop it yourself and then throw it into a converter, or you could, you could just steal them off online. And the stealing ended up being a lot more substantial than I thought, because I was looking at all these articles and I emailed people. I found people's emails that were heads of different editorial boards and people that were writing articles and stuff at different websites. And I was like, hey, I made this service if you're interested in it. And I got nothing. I probably spent $2,000 or so building the website and getting everything up and running, not to mention countless like opportunity cost hours. For about 2 months or 3 months, I really tried to run with this thing. And it ended up like being a complete and total flop. Like I went to like small business meetings, like trying to like shop it and everything, ended up failing completely. I think I made one sale that was an actual client, and the other one was like my mom and my wife's mom. It was like all it was. So that was my, I didn't make $1,000 with this thing, so I'm going to close it down. Let the URL expire. It's called In a Jiffy. I had a whole thing and logo. I put so much work into that. And it was a complete failure. And so one of the things I learned from that was like, I tried doing way too much upfront work before I put it out in front of people, right? Before I got it out and let anyone else see it, versus what you were saying, like you just did one really solid one, saw the interest first. And after you saw the interest, and it's like, let me give one away for free. And I think that would have been a lot better of a template to use, rather than let me try to go ahead and make like the whole thing, guess that the industry is interested in this. And there's no competing with free, right? So I was competing with literally people. Cause in my head, I was like, what's going to happen is Seinfeld or Friends or somebody's eventually going to sue one of these publications for using their imagery without permission. Like eventually BuzzFeed is going to get a lawsuit eventually. And it never happened. I was like, what? You're kidding me. And so to this day, like BuzzFeed's just like ripping stuff from all these things. I'm like, but you can't go on YouTube for 5 seconds. If I show a clip on here for like 10 seconds, my whole video gets taken down. But if I like make an article and then throw like, a 5-second GIF and like take every scene from a movie and like break it out in GIFs, it's like, that's completely fine. It's absolutely
I don't know why
nuts.
GIFs get this free pass. I don't understand it either.
I don't either, but it never happened. So I made this whole bet on this thing and it completely failed. Wasted like 3 months of my life and a couple $1,000 and learned very quickly that I didn't, not to do that. I still do it now and then, but I've done a lot better with Rails and Rogues and starting small and building very, very slowly.
To your point about like, probably like, I think the issue with that was like trying to go too big or like to gone too wide with like building a platform and the whole thing and then trying to market it. I almost did that same mistake with the website where I was like, I'm going to make this the platform for sports designers to sell their own templates. And I got a quote for that and it was $20,000. And I didn't have that kind of money. And I was like, maybe it's not meant to be, because in my mind, I was like, it could only work if I did whatever Envato is doing. But then I just kind of figured out this new format where like, it's just a website for my stuff. It's a template stuff. It's a template website, but I'm just posting my stuff. Maybe in the future, which is something I'm kind of working on now to kind of like expand it. But yeah, trying to do like to go too big too early, probably like this is a recipe for failure.
Right. Yeah. It reminds me of my film school days where people would get their first film project. It was a short film project. And it was supposed to be like 10 minutes was like the max. It was like 5 to 10 minutes. And then I watched a student after student try to make their magnum opus. Like they tried making like, the Rosebud or like Lord of the Rings. And they're like, we're going to get like prop designers and we're going to get makeup artists. It's going to be a sci-fi thriller. And I'm like, guys, you have like a budget of like $30 and duct tape. Like, what are you doing? Like, make some stupid stop motion thing and be done with it. But like, and they'd make everyone miserable for a week. We had a guy like steal the camera and run off. We had one shoot where everyone just like was like, we're quitting. Like, we're not working anymore. They worked like 13 hours straight. And the guy like refused to let them like stop. And he's like, fine, I'll shoot it myself. And like took the camera from the cinematographer and started shooting random scenes. And we're like, you've lost it. You've completely lost it. But that's how we are as creatives. It's like, I'm going to make the biggest, bestest thing when I have no ability and no knowledge and don't understand how complicated or hard it is. So it's like, start small, and that's okay. I think another key lesson was, kind of like the life unexamined, right? Like really look at it. What do you really want, right? Talk to people that have the jobs that you want to have. I've had the same experience over and over and over again. Talking to people in the industry. And I worked in the gaming industry for a little while, in casino games, not video games. And I do a lot of work still with the gaming industry. But when I was in the casino games, it was similar. It was like, we're going to track all of your time. We're going to measure how many times you go to the bathroom. All the websites are blocked. We're going to have meetings. We tell you if you're listening to a podcast while working, then you're not really working, and it was miserable. And it was like, I don't want to do this. And the people that I heard felt the worst for were the concept artists, cause it's like, they're trying to be purely creative. I'm just animating their work and moving it around. And like, it's still very creative, but it's like not like blank page, right? It's like, oh, here's a dude and he obviously has like an axe, so his hand needs to move this way, right? There's like limitations, but they're just like told to make something. And it's like, you're not allowed to have any inspiration. You're not allowed to do anything unique. And then we wonder why stuff is like derivative. But it's crazy watching as people though have these dreams of, oh, I want to go here and work this, or I want to do that. And they don't understand what that really means for them. And so one of my main reasons for wanting to talk to you was to give people a different perspective of, hey, you don't have to go and necessarily, if you want to work in sports, like maybe come up with a new way of doing it, merging something that you're already really good at or interested in. The same things for challenges I'd give for people like that want to work in the gaming industry. It's like, maybe find something like, what else can you do that you could augment that would make this, you can kind of marry these two things. And like, you just kind of have to keep re-examining it every so often. One thing, if you're willing, I kind of like to get into, is there's a lot of people that I know that I don't know how many people are going to watch this, but there are a lot of people I tend to interact with that are just starting out and they're like, well, I can't do that. Right. Like, well, I'm not there. I'm in too poor of a country. I know a lot of people from India is like, YouTube's really taking off and it's like, I can't do that. And I've lived in India for 6 months before, and understand a lot of the issues, but this isn't a limitation for those people. And I was wondering if you could get into a little bit of that time in 2007 when you're just starting out. What was your situation like, and how did that evolve?
So back then I'm half Lebanese, half Syrian. My mom is from Lebanon. My dad is from Syria. And back at that time, I was still in Syria. I was stuck in a country where basically you have a dictator kind of running the whole country. You have no access to YouTube, no access to Wikipedia, no access to Facebook. Of course you have dial-up. And I would just go online and try, this time with like DeviantArt and trying to be part of this whole thing. At the same time, like how I didn't speak a lot of English, so I kind of learned just watching stand-up comedy because I just love stand-up comedy, and it was something I really liked. So trying to make it with my bad English back then, and in a place where there's no internet and there's no American companies operating there because of its dictatorship, and it's not doing any business with the U.S. So you don't have PayPal, you don't have any of these companies. Like everything's like, oh, you're in a sanction, because of sanctions on Syria. So I couldn't do anything, and I learned about proxies. So I had a friend who was living outside of the country, like in Europe, and he helped me get a proxy connection. Mm-hmm. And we bought a specific piece of receiver that you can get download speeds through satellite radio, satellite internet. So I'm downloading through satellite and I'm uploading through dial-up. I didn't need a lot of upload speed, but I needed a lot of download. And I did this contract with an Italian company, and they were covering because Syria is kind of on the my city was on the Mediterranean, so it was like it just kind of in the same area that Italian company covers, and it just worked out for me. Like it was jumping through so many hoops so I can just be at least on an equal footing with the rest of the world. Like I just want working internet.
Right.
And
this is where I tell you that this is sponsored by NordVPN. Get a VPN. No, I'm kidding. I wish.
They're everywhere. Like whenever you go, you see a NordVPN.
Yeah, exactly. One day. Yeah,
you never know.
So you're cobbling together this stuff, and it's funny because when I was living in India, and then also I used to do a lot of work in Spain. It was very similar. It was like you'd not as bad, obviously. Like there wasn't a dictator in any of those countries when I was there. But it was the same thing. It's like you had cables and 10 different things going to 10 different, it's like, well, we're going to run this through, like you said, dial up. This is going to be through, whatever. And as you get more rural, which is where a lot of time I was, you got more and more creative with how you're going to get access to things.
Absolutely. So yeah, trying to make it in that environment pretty stressful, especially that I didn't have anybody around me that was had the same interest, like talking about, like I wanted to talk about, oh, do you know like this new Photoshop feature? Oh, do you know anything about this 3D thing? There was only like one person that I kind of connected with, and he was more on the development side. So we kind of talked a little bit, but there was absolutely no community, and there was no option, and there was no graphic design school. So like if it was really easy to give up right there and just do whatever everyone else is doing, get a degree in whatever, and just do a government job and get paid like peanuts.
Mm-hmm.
So but working online kind of like made me realize like there's this whole world kind of outside, and I could be part of it. So and then the war started, about the war in Syria started in 2011. Mm-hmm. And it was when I was, this is where I discovered Envato, where I was like, oh, I'm starting to do this stuff. And then the war started. And now on top of all of that, you have ISIS kind of like in the neighboring city.
And you're probably, what, 20, 21 at this point, 23?
Yeah, 22.
Yeah, okay.
22, 21. And so on top of all that, is like, in my mind, like, I just want to get out. I don't want to die. Like, I want to do creative things. I want to be in the sports industry, like all these thoughts. And it's like, oh, there's a war. And every day I'm thinking about like thousands of, like, I think up to now the death toll is like 1 million persons. In 10 years. It's insane. So, yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, I know, like, everyone, I'm not trying to kind of like disrespect anyone else's struggles or anything, but this was a pretty rough place to be.
That's about as bad as you get. I mean, it's pretty hard to get past like fearing for my life every day as far as struggling, that's about as true as a struggle as you can have. Absolutely. And it was like the positive thing of this whole thing was that, okay, I can't get out because everything is kind of like, you got secret police, you got like all kinds of people trying to, do like really bad stuff. So I kind of just stayed home and I just put all that frustration into like learning. And I just like started like, there wasn't like back then, now people have it really easy with YouTube. You can just learn everything on YouTube. Back then, there was not a lot of YouTube educational stuff. You just go download a PDF or you just get bits and pieces of like an HTML page where like they have like a 12-step on how to do something, and it's really vague and you have to kind of fill in the blanks and figure it out for yourself. So I was just putting all my time into learning, and I realized that if I want to make it, I have to save so I can get out. And this is what I did. I didn't spend my money on anything. I just bought like a graphics card or stuff like that, just things to kind of help me work. And I paid for like a battery of a truck to power my computer when I'm rendering, because there was no electricity. You get it about 4 hours a day, and then that's it. So I needed to work more than 4 hours. Imagine like you have a Skype call schedule with a client, and it's like, oh, it's when the electricity is out. So you have to be like, and no one's gonna believe this whole sob stories. Like they want their project done on that day, so you gotta figure it out. So during that time, I connected with a friend who was half Syrian, half Romanian, and he moved to Romania like in 2004 or something. He used to be a friend with my dad, and but he was older than me, but we were kind of like, he had like this young spirit, and he would always come over and talk about computers and video games and stuff like that. And I kind of connected. I found him on DeviantArt by chance, because we didn't, back then he didn't have my info after he left. He was just on the same route. He was a graphic designer doing stuff on DeviantArt, and I just recognized his name. And I just is like, by any chance that same guy is like, that is me. Wow. We hopped on Skype and kind of like, caught up on the whole like 7-8 years about what happened and stuff. And he's like, you know what, I'll see what I can do. Maybe I can get you to Romania. It's not, like going from Syria to anywhere in the world is pretty much, I think it's like the third worst passport. I think it pretty much gets you to, I think North Korea, because they're friends, and Iran. Mm-hmm. So, these are my options. Everything else you need a visa. So
we did this whole thing, and I went to Lebanon so I can go to Romania because there was everything was closed in Syria. And I jumped through all these hoops, and it worked. I didn't even believe it would work, like, because it was like no one. It was around the time where like Syrians were jumping into like the water, like the refugee crisis. It was around that time. Like there was no one is letting any Syrian on a plane, because they're just desperate to kind of go ask for a refugee and asylum and all that kind of stuff. So after we kind of like worked on that, I got the visa and I was able to come to Romania, and it just all my future, how I'm gonna like put it, like
opportunities,
it's just everything kind of opened up, like it's a country in the EU, they have PayPal, they have fast internet. Actually, when I came to Romania, it was the second fastest internet in the world, which is something kind of random.
It's kind of crazy to think about, but yeah,
because people are like, oh, it's Romania has like a lot of bad rep, but like it's one of the most beautiful countries. I kind of like went around Europe. I went to a lot of places, and I still think Romania is like the most beautiful nature.
Yeah, I know a few Romanians, and I hire a few people from Romania, and it seems really legit. I haven't been there. I've been all over the place, but I haven't gotten to Romania yet. But yeah, it seems really cool. I want to go to Estonia. That's one of the places I really want to go to. But
a lot of cool things happening there with Tallinn, and they have this like online government and stuff.
Yeah.
So coming here, kind of like it took me a while to kind of like decompress and just like, okay, I'm not in danger anymore, and I can now at least focus on what I can do. And this was like around 2014. So after a year, like the idea of sports centers was already kind of brewing in my head, but I didn't feel like you can do any of that stuff being stuck there. So coming to Romania, like, all right, now actually I can start doing it.
That's insane to me. It's insane to me that like, while living through all this craziness, you were still like thinking creatively and trying to think through like, oh, what can I do? And like this and that. And like, I could do club posters and stuff, but like, wouldn't it be cool to like work with whatever? And like, I don't know, that it excites me a lot as someone that's an unapologetic, like, bootstraps type of guy, like that's the beauty of it. Like, I think everyone gets so caught up in like a lot of the negative stuff around business and a lot of the negative stuff around, and this is why I think a lot of people are kind of afraid to start their own thing, is they like, well, I don't want to become this tyrant that rules over other people and tells them what to do. But it's like a lot of it, especially the small stuff, the small business world, the not becoming this horrible, awful, giant corporation, is just beautiful to hear the story of somebody just having an idea, thinking, if I pursue it and if I try it, and like almost giving up on it multiple times, perhaps not even able to get to someplace that had fast enough internet to do this stuff, but then pushing through and doing it. And like you said, like you would not say that it was all just hard work. Like you were blessed, and there's a lot of it that feels like, again, you're making it real hard for me with my whole luck thing, but I do think it's still calculated. like you running into that friend sounds absolutely crazy, right? It's like that you can't write a book better than that. Like, and then I was on this art website, and I happened to run into this person, and then, I reconnect with someone that I hadn't talked to in 10 years or whatever. And then they helped get me out of the country.
Actually, it all went down to one specific thing about his name, because his name is Wasim. Usually it's written with a W, but he wrote with the O because Romanians pronounce it as Vasim. So he made sure Romanians pronounce it with the O. So it was like a Wasim with a W, with the O at the start. And then when I saw his name on TV, like if I saw like with a W, probably wouldn't have like messaged him, because there's a million. It's like a famous, like a prominent, it's not a rare Arabic name, but with an O, I was like, this must be the guy. Like, what are the chances? Someone, and this is how it happened. Yeah, it sounds like something out of a movie, but this is why I feel like, look, I'd love to kind of like take credit for everything. It's like, no, I worked hard and I earned everything. But sometimes if this didn't happen, I probably would have given up in Syria and just, went on my depression, because I was like in a bad, doing this whole thing, depression, you can't really like escape that. So, but I was just trying like, I don't know, I'm usually like a hopeful person. I always stay positive, and because I just can't stay negative. Like if something negative happened, I can only be like, feeling negative about it for like a couple of days, and then I have to get out of it because I just can't deal with it. I have to just keep these positive thoughts, and so I can keep going.
Yeah, I often feel the same way as like if I get down or depressed for, a day or two, like I can only let it go in that one spot for so long before I'm like, okay, I got to change it. Otherwise I'll just never get out. I can't just sit here. And there's a time I think in a few years back where I went through a long stint of that, and I was like, you know what, this isn't helping me. I got to keep moving on. But it's a lot easier. I was just getting over like a girl at the time. So it's a lot easier for me in that situation than like, living in a place that, is literally a war torn, and trying to figure out how to, meet clients with a car battery. It's a little bit different. I'm not going to exactly compare the two 1-to-1.
I mean, do you know what people talk about, this immigrant mentality where like you kind of come to a place appreciating everything that's being given to you, and like, okay, these are like the basic level stuff that people don't even like take for granted and don't even think about. And now you're coming from a place where like this feels like heaven. So you kind of like try to really take advantage of it and kind of like maximize it, maximize the use of it, instead of like, because I mean, a lot of people here kind of like, there's no work, because Romania is like an immigrant country. Like a lot of Romanians go and work in other, like in the UK and in Germany. So it's kind of seen like, this country where they don't have a lot of work and they have to go outside to kind of find something. And for me, just, coming here was like, I've seen this big breakthrough in my career and my, like, and everything, like thinking about my future and this kind of stuff. So yeah, I feel like coming from a place where like it's really kind of struggling to a place that's just, they got the basics covered. It just was like a big upgrade for me.
Yeah, I think it was a really good point of what you just said, which was, taking advantage of every opportunity you do have, right? I think so often we can look at all the things we don't have access to or don't have the opportunity. And that's one of the things one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of tell this story is because I think a lot of people would look and be like, well, I don't have X, Y, or Z, or I can't do this because, I don't have fast internet. I just have regular internet, or I don't have, a good, nice webcam, right? I just have like a crappy cell phone, or I don't have whatever. So I can't make the thing that they want to make. And the answer is like, it might be a lot harder. It'll probably be a heck of a lot harder. But if you use the resources you do have creatively, you can usually find something out. There are people, that does not mean that we suddenly lose empathy for people that don't have, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if you are stuck there and you're the one that has to take responsibility for your situation, whether you should or not, it doesn't matter. You have to, in those cases, it's like find the satellite phone and the dial-up connection and a car battery and get yourself a better life. That's what you're going to have to do. Because no one else has done it, and to this day, there's still a ton of issues, right, in Syria and other places where, it's like people haven't been able to get anything to work out really long term. And it's like, we need to figure that out. But in the meantime, you're responsible for your own body, your own soul. And, if you can look for where do I have opportunities? And then once those opportunities open up, like, okay, where do I have more opportunities? Like, what else can I do? How do I leverage this new talent or this exciting, interest I have, and how can I leverage this or that or this other thing, and then really once you get to a point where, okay, I'm not dying anymore, I'm not looking to how to feed myself. I think the next step, like you said, is examine, is this really what I want? Now that I have the luxury to ask what I want, is this what I want? Do I want to go work for Ubisoft, or, do I want to work in San Francisco at a tech company doing UI and UX design? It's like, I don't know. Like I thought I did, but, now that I have a time to look at it, and I think the kind of last part of that whole cycle is, be okay to let go, right? If you thought you wanted something and you pursue it and you achieve it, and then it's not what you think or it's not what you wanted, it's like, hey, maybe this isn't working out. Or I spent 2 months working on something. It's like, move on to the next thing, try it again. I think that's the whole cycle of being an entrepreneur is like, necessity is the mother of invention. And then once you've invented something, it's like being not so attached to it that you're willing to constantly change and adapt and let go and move on. And I think in a lot of ways, it's kind of that immigrant story that you have plays into that ability. It's like you couldn't get too attached to things because you didn't know if you would have them.
Yeah.
Right? You didn't know if the internet would be on tomorrow. So it's like, I got to use it while I can.
Yeah.
And so that disattachment, that ability to pivot quickly and to change your mind and to, accept an opportunity when it comes knocking, without, rather than asking what could go wrong, it's like, well, what could go right? Like, what if I do get a visa? What if I do get out of here? Like, that's worth trying. I think that really, really helps in the whole process.
Absolutely. And just to touch back on the idea of like not losing empathy, like, like always keeping empathy with other people, like, because it's easy to kind of like adapt to this new life. It's like, oh, well, just work hard and things happens for you. I mean, after coming here, I still had my whole family in Syria,
Right.
my parents and my siblings, and I couldn't actually like be comfortable and do anything like with a clear conscience in mind until I was able to get everyone here. I got both my parents and my sister and my brother, and now they have their life here and everything is working good for them. And now I can finally like actually focus and, for me that was a big part of, like so sometimes people do it like, what's the motivation? Like people do it for fame, for money, for credit, for like, oh, I'm the best designer for stuff. But for me, this thing was one of the pluses, that all right, now I can afford to actually do that,
Mm-hmm.
and it was something that really just made me kind of put some purpose on what I'm doing.
No, I think for sure. I think you have to have, I think that's one of the big problems. This is one of the reasons why I get annoyed at these giant like companies and stuff. It's like, you can't have empathy for everyone all at the same time, and they pretend to, but you can't, so it's like having a goal like that, having a reason, like, who am I trying to help out with what I'm doing? And, I don't know if there's more of a noble goal than helping out your family, get out of a terrible situation. But also, in some ways it's like, well, success, and you could just turn around and be like, well, I got myself out, why don't you guys all do the same? That's not the right attitude. I think you keep the empathy for sure, and trying to help out people that are in that situation. But at the same time, it was a reason for you to pursue success, right? And not just be like, oh, well, someone's going to get them out, so I should count on somebody else. It's, again, like, you took responsibility for your own life in that sense, and then for their lives, even though you didn't have to, and said, I'm going to, try to help out however I can. I think that's the right attitude to have. And I think it's something that I'm hoping to foster with this, is more of that, hey, what can I do? Like, you could have just been like, oh, I'll just petition the government and vote, and then I'll pay taxes, and hopefully somebody then one day goes and like, saves them, and I'll wash my hands of this. It's like, no, I'm not going to wait for everyone else to figure out, the problems that I see. If I see a problem, it's like, I'm going to work on solving it. How can I get them over? What can I do? What sort of things can we apply for, and you just, once again, look for every opportunity you have, rather than, well, there's not a clear path, and so I'm just going to keep waiting until someone makes it for me.
Absolutely.
Well, man, this has been an absolutely fantastic conversation. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much, man, for jumping on and for this call. Absolutely. It's been really good getting to know you more, and hearing your whole story is like, I'm like, okay, well, now I got to write a book or something. Like, what are we doing?
Well, I'm really happy I did this, and I'm looking forward to see like the final version.